Hi, I'm Claire. And this is the story of how my sister became a celebrated tech icon by stealing the one idea I thought was mine alone. They called her a visionary, a genius, the future of ethical finance. But none of them saw the notebook she mocked, or the truth buried behind her applause. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about reclaiming your voice when everyone else decided you didn't have one. Before we go any further, tell me, has someone ever taken credit for something you created? If yes, comment number 7 below, because what happened next might just change how you see silence and the quiet ones who never stopped building. They kept telling me I wasn't the type to lead anything important, until the news article said otherwise. I stood just inside the grand ballroom of the Tacoma Grand Hotel, clutching the email printout like a backstage pass I wasn't sure I had the right to use. The air smelled of roses and roasted lamb, and the soft clinking of champagne glasses hit my ears like a dull echo. The doorman had eyed me skeptically when I said I wasn't on the list, but had been invited. I had to dig through my coat pocket to produce Mom's forwarded email. It felt like showing up to a wedding in the wrong dress. A staff member guided me to a table near the back. "You'll be comfortable here," she smiled politely. I caught her eyes scanning my plain dress, then glancing back at the front tables packed with donors, tech elites, and family. My family. The stage lights dimmed, and my sister Serena stepped up to the podium. The crowd quieted, poised like a congregation. She looked radiant, polished curls, midnight blue gown, even the kind of laugh that could disarm a room. She launched into her speech. When I first imagined a more transparent way to manage charitable giving through blockchain technology, I froze. The words were too familiar, too close to what I'd spent a year sketching in notebooks and discussing in study lounges 3 years ago. Back when Serena would come into my room unannounced, glancing at my whiteboard where I'd written, "Real-time public visibility for fund allocation." I remembered the night I'd scribbled the concept in my leather-bound journal. She'd leaned against my doorframe and said, "Sounds a little too idealistic, Claire. Probably not something investors would bite." I didn't argue. I had a tendency to second-guess myself, especially when she spoke with such certainty. Now, here she was, presenting it to a sea of applause, like she'd born it in a dream. I stayed quiet during dinner, pushing around wilted greens and listening to our father go on about Serena's boldness and natural edge. When I tried to comment on the potential ethical challenges of implementing that kind of real-time data transparency, he chuckled and waved me off. "Claire, you're sweet, but this isn't the time for hypotheticals." Mom smiled thinly. "Let's just celebrate tonight. No need to dissect things." And then there was Mr. Renshaw, an old family friend who leaned over the table and said, "You're the quieter one, right?" I nodded. It didn't feel worth correcting. Later, I stepped out onto the hotel balcony. The rain had started again, soft but steady, tapping against the ornate railing. The cold air stung my cheeks, and I folded my arms tightly, rubbing my fingers together to chase warmth back into them. The ballroom lights flickered on the glass behind me, casting distorted reflections of people toasting with flutes of champagne and nodding reverently to my sister's voice. 3 years ago, I'd let this go. I'd told myself that ideas weren't ownership, that maybe she really had just been inspired. Maybe it was just coincidence. But this wasn't a shared idea. It was mine, down to the phrasing, the model, even the social impact pitch. And this time, I had proof. The dated entries in my notebook, the old Google slides, the emails I'd once drafted to professors, asking if the project could be revived after graduation. I gripped the balcony railing harder, Thanksgiving was just a few weeks away. The family would expect another joint dinner, a smiling photo for the mantel. I imagined Mom brushing my hair behind my ear and whispering, "Just let Serena have this. You know how important this moment is for her." And I'd nod, as always. But something inside me was shifting. I wasn't jealous. I was angry, because I had proof. And this time, I wasn't letting it go. When you're the quiet sibling, people don't notice when your idea gets stolen, at least not right away. The smell of rosemary and roasted chicken filled the air as I stepped into the family dining room. Candlelight flickered against the window panes, and the soft hum of piano music played from the old stereo in the corner. The long oak table was already set, white linen napkins, Mom's silver flatware, and a bowl of mashed potatoes steaming in the center. If you squinted, it could have passed for one of those holiday commercials. Except for the tension hanging in the air, like a tightrope I had to walk. Serena was already at the table, swirling cranberry sauce into her potatoes, like she didn't have a care in the world. Mom greeted me with a cheek kiss and a, "You look tired, sweetie," while Dad raised his wine glass slightly and said, "Glad you made it." His eyes went back to his phone almost immediately. We were barely through the salad when I spoke. "I wanted to talk about Serena's speech the other night." Serena raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" I chose my words carefully. It reminded me a lot of something I worked on in college. The phrasing, the use case, even the diagrams. It was all very familiar. She let out a small, amused breath. "Claire, everyone in tech is working on transparency models. It's not like you invented giving money to charity." I blinked. "That's not what I'm saying. It's just, we used to share ideas, and that project meant a lot to me." She shrugged and popped a roasted carrot into her mouth. "Execution matters more than theory. You didn't do anything with it." Mom reached over to squeeze my hand. "Claire, honey, don't take it so hard. I'm sure it was just a coincidence." Dad chimed in without looking up. "And even if it wasn't, maybe take it as a compliment. You inspired something great." I stared at him. "You think being used without acknowledgement is inspiring?" He set his fork down. "You've always had good instincts, Claire. But Serena, she gets things done. That's just the truth of it." It wasn't the first time she'd taken something I built and made it hers. Just the most public. The silence around the table grew heavier. I pushed my plate back and folded my hands in my lap. "I think I need some space." Mom tilted her head, concerned. "From what, sweetie?" "From all of this." I looked around the table, the framed photos of Serena with mayors and funders, the wall shelf filled with her awards. My childhood piano trophies were nowhere in sight. "I'm going to move out." Mom blinked like I'd spoken in another language. "But Thanksgiving is around the corner. Who's going to make the sweet potato casserole?" "I'm not saying I won't come back," I said quietly. "I'm just saying I need to leave for a while." Dad raised his eyebrows, but didn't object. Serena didn't even look up from her phone. I waited for someone to stop me, to say they understood, to ask why. But no one did. Have you ever felt like I do now? The ache of being overlooked, dismissed, even by the people who are supposed to know you best. If you've ever been made to feel like an extra page in someone else's story, leave a comment number 8 below. Now, let's see what happened next. That night, I packed a small suitcase. My room still had the lace curtains from high school and a bookshelf filled with dog-eared paperbacks, but none of it felt like it belonged to me anymore. I folded sweaters, tucked my journal between them, and zipped the bag slowly, like I was sealing a decision that had been years in the making. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A stream of messages came in from the family group chat. "Let's not make this bigger than it is. We're all proud of you in different ways. Don't be dramatic, Claire. It's just business. I didn't reply. When the Uber driver arrived, I dragged my suitcase down the steps quietly, like a house guest leaving before dawn. He helped me lift the bag into the trunk and gave me a warm smile when I tipped him extra, something I knew he wasn't expecting from someone moving into a one-bedroom behind a print shop downtown. As the car pulled away, I looked back once at the house, glowing softly in the distance. That night, I quietly packs one suitcase, ignoring the family's group texts about overreacting. It's funny how the smallest kindness, a free latte and a name remembered, can be the spark for everything else. My new apartment was a converted garage tucked behind an old sign shop. Mr. Cole, the landlord, had been a sign maker for 50 years before arthritis made him trade paintbrushes for porch naps. He said I was lucky to catch the place between tenants, though lucky felt like a stretch when I had to jiggle the doorknob just right to lock it. Still, it was mine. The walls smelled faintly of cedar, and the heater hummed like it had a secret. I set my chipped coffee mug on the windowsill and opened my old laptop, the one with a missing shift key and stickers fading at the edges. I hadn't touched the pitch deck in over 2 years. It was like facing an old friend you weren't sure still liked you. Outside, the rain came and went in waves, soft as a lullaby. I wrapped myself in a sweatshirt and scribbled diagrams into my notebook. What if I streamlined the back end? What if I cut out the donor visibility feature altogether? I didn't know where it was heading yet, but it was mine again. Later that afternoon, I crossed the street to Maxwell's Diner. The bell above the door jingled, and warmth wrapped around me like an old quilt. Vinyl booths, smell of eggs and toast. A college-aged barista looked up from the espresso machine and did a double take. "Claire?" I blinked. "Yes?" "It's me, Spencer. You tutored me in logic systems junior year." Memory clicked into place. "You're the guy who built a calculator inside a pumpkin." He grinned. "That's me. You helped me pass my final. I owe you for that." I smiled politely, unsure what else to say. "Latte's on the house. Least I can do." I watched as he swirled the milk with practiced ease and set the cup down in front of me. My name was scribbled on the side in permanent marker. Spelled right, even. I took the cup to the corner booth and opened my laptop. Spencer wiped down tables nearby, but didn't interrupt. When I finally looked up, he nodded toward my screen. "That project?" "Sort of a version of it," I said, hesitating. "Good. You should finish it. There's a tech fair next month at the recreation center. You should apply." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. That night, the rain had picked up again, tapping against the window like a rhythm I almost remembered. I was deep in the code, trying to fix a bug that made the interface stutter, when there was a knock on the door. It was Mr. Cole, in a robe and slippers, holding a mug of chamomile tea. "Didn't mean to interrupt," he said. "Just noticed your lights were still on." "I was coding." He peeked at the screen. It looked important. "It is, or was. I'm not sure what it is now." He nodded and sipped his tea. "You know, I used to paint signs all night long. Folks never knew who made them, but they remembered the feeling when they saw their name in gold leaf. That's how you know something's worth doing." Before he left, he muttered something about knocking a few bucks off my rent if I kept the porch light on for security. I knew it was just his way of helping. The next morning, I heard another knock. This time, it was a kid, 14 maybe, standing with a backpack and a notebook full of doodles. "You the computer lady?" he asked. "I guess so." "I'm Jonah. I live next door. My science teacher said we could do a project on anything if it used logic. My mom said you knew computers. Can you help?" His face was open and earnest. I nodded. We sat on the porch that afternoon, carving out flowcharts in pencil. He was quick, too quick sometimes, but full of questions and theories. Helping him reminded me of who I used to be: curious, willing, excited. A few nights later, Spencer dropped off a sticky note with 3 names and emails. "Freelance leads," he said. "They're small gigs," he added, "but you're good." I stared at the note for a long time. For the first time in months, I felt needed, and not by my family. I stare at my updated pitch deck late at night and whisper, "Let's see if this version can't outrun the theft." At the community tech fair, most people passed my booth without a second glance, until the demo started running. The gym smelled like kettle corn and slightly burnt coffee. Paper leaves in every shade of autumn hung from basketball hoops and folding tables. Somewhere nearby, a folk music playlist played low from a Bluetooth speaker. Spencer had helped me carry in the small table and old laptop, while Jonah zigzagged through the rows, trying to find the robotics team's booth before the crowds poured in. We were tucked near the back, not far from the emergency exit and next to a booth run by a local high school coding club offering AI-generated poetry and caramel popcorn. I had one handwritten sign taped to the front: "Financial Equity Algorithm for Communities, Not Corporations." It looked more like a middle school science fair project than a polished product. I felt exposed standing behind it, like someone who'd arrived in the wrong outfit to the wrong party. A few people slowed down, smiled politely, then kept walking. One man leaned in and asked if I was giving away keychains. I shook my head. He walked away. Spencer gave me a reassuring nod from the snack table, holding 2 paper cups of cider. "It's early," he said, handing one to me. "Techies don't peak until afternoon." I laughed, but it sounded thin even to me. I tried not to check the time too often, but each passing minute gnawed at the edges of my confidence. I sipped the cider, too sweet, too warm, and adjusted the sign for the 5th time. And then Jonah showed up, with 5 kids trailing behind him like ducklings. "This is Claire," he announced loudly. "She made this app that helps people get loans, even if their credit's trashed." "Jonah?" "No, seriously," he cut in. "She explained it to me like, if your grandma paid rent on time for 10 years but doesn't have a credit card, this thing sees that and helps her anyway." The kids leaned closer. One nudged the laptop, and the interface blinked to life. "Whoa," one said. "It's like a fairness filter." Jonah grinned. "Told you." They weren't venture capitalists, but they listened. They asked smart, curious questions. One boy wanted to know if it worked in rural areas. Another girl said her aunt always paid her car insurance in cash and wondered if that counted. Soon there were more. A woman pushing a stroller, a guy in a tool belt, even a pair of teenagers with matching beanies who mumbled questions and nodded along. Spencer handed out printed one-pagers, and I walked through the logic. How it weighted utility payments, consistent rent, and local community involvement to evaluate financial credibility. The crowd shifted. More eyes, more attention. I forgot to be nervous. Then she appeared. Gray hair in a perfect bob, scarf folded with intention, a leather tote slung over her shoulder like it held something important. She studied the screen silently. Her eyes didn't flick away like most. They narrowed. She stayed. "Does this system learn over time?" she asked, tapping gently near the income history input field. "Yes," I said. "The weighting matrix updates based on verified inputs. It adjusts for local inflation metrics and neighborhood-specific predictors," she finished. "Smart, underused." She turned to me. "I'm Martha Harrington. I used to manage a seed fund back in the early 2000s. I don't hand out cards often these days. She reached into her tote and handed me a business card with an embossed acorn on it. But I'd like to know where this goes. Before I could say thank you, Spencer let out a low whistle. Claire? He murmured. Look. I followed his gaze. Serena. She was wearing a sleek blazer, heels that clicked like punctuation, and an expression that stopped short of surprise, but not by much. She'd arrived late, likely fresh from another panel. Her eyes locked on the screen, then drifted to the sign taped in front of me. For a full second, we just looked at each other. She walked forward, slow and deliberate, ignoring the people milling around. She didn't even glance at Spencer or Jonah, though I saw Jonah step half a foot behind me, suddenly unsure. Serena leaned in, her voice low. What are you trying to do, Claire? I just smile and say, even the quiet ones have something to say. I never stole from you, Serena said, voice trembling. I refined it. You were going to let it die in a notebook. The cafe was nearly empty, save for an older couple by the window and a teenager wiping down menus with slow, circular motions. Rain streaked down the glass, blurring the view of the street beyond, where maple leaves swirled into the gutter like small golden whirlpools. The place smelled faintly of cinnamon and old wood. A bell chimed softly overhead as Serena and I sat across from each other, a shared cinnamon roll untouched between us. She had texted me the night after the tech fair. Just one sentence. Let's talk. No parents, no noise. I agreed, though I wasn't sure what I wanted from this conversation. Closure, maybe, or just the chance to say it all out loud. We started with pleasantries, weather, Jonah's school project, even a mention of the cafe's jukebox that was softly playing Fleetwood Mac. She commented on the rain. I said it suited the season. But when I pulled the worn notebook from my bag and slid it across the table, the mood shifted like a power outage. You remember this? I asked, flipping to the sketch with the side calculations that had become the framework for both our systems. She didn't touch it, just stared. I remember thinking it was too big, she said finally. Too soft, too thoughtful. I didn't think it would land. You told me it was impractical, I replied, not with bitterness, just fact. And then you built a louder version. I was trying to keep it alive, she whispered. Investors don't fund quiet intentions, Claire. They fund confidence. You wouldn't pitch it. I wasn't ready. You were never going to be. I folded my hands in my lap. The truth landed with a strange, empty clarity. She wasn't trying to mock me back then. She had genuinely believed I would let it rot in the shadows. You didn't believe in me, I said finally. I believed in the idea, she answered, and I thought I had to act before it faded. There was no arrogance in her tone now, just fear, and maybe, for the first time, a little guilt. Her fingers toyed with the edge of a napkin, folding and unfolding it with nervous precision. I wasn't idle these past months, I said. I worked, alone, rebuilt everything. I stripped it back down to the soul it started with. I saw. We sat in silence while a barista changed out the coffee urn behind us, the soft clang of metal echoing like punctuation. A man passed by outside, holding a dripping umbrella, his dog tugging at the leash. My phone buzzed. Ms. Harrington, texting to say she was free later this week for a call. I put the phone back in my coat pocket without replying. I'm not going to sue you, I said, watching her flinch. But I'm not stepping aside either. She looked up. Then what? I'm going to outwork you, outbuild you. Serena blinked, her breath hitching faintly, like she hadn't expected that answer. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, not in defeat, but in understanding. For once, we weren't arguing about the past. We were acknowledging who we both were now. "I didn't mean to erase you," she murmured. "But I did, didn't I?" "You didn't erase me. I just had to redraw the outline. Do you think forgiveness always requires an apology?" I stood my ground not with rage, but with resolve. And sometimes that's even harder. If you believe strength can be quiet and steady, drop a number 9 in the comments. Now, let's move forward together. Jonah pushed through the cafe door just then, hair damp from the rain, cheeks pink. He was clutching something in one hand and had a lopsided grin on his face. "I dropped this yesterday," he said, holding out a folded envelope. "Meant to give it to you earlier." I opened it after he left. Inside was a handmade card that said "Thank you" in glitter pen, with a crooked drawing of his team's school project. "We got second place," it read. "You're cool even when you're coding." I laughed quietly, the first real laugh of the afternoon. "You've got fans," Serena said, attempting a smile. "I'm building something honest, from scratch. That draws the right kind of attention." Serena nodded, glancing once more at the notebook still lying open on the table. Her eyes lingered there, not with envy, but maybe with recognition. She stood, slipping her bag over one shoulder, hesitation softening her features. The door chimed again as someone walked in behind her, bringing a gust of cold air and the faint smell of pine from outside. As Serena leaves, she stops and says, "Maybe we should have built it together." I don't answer, but watch her go. 3 months later, I stood at the ribbon cutting of a small startup incubator, one we'd built above a print shop, where my idea was born again. The January sunlight was thin but generous, spilling in through the tall front windows and catching the floating dust in lazy spirals. We had fairy lights strung between the ceiling beams, and rows of mismatched folding chairs where neighbors, students, and a few curious city officials had gathered. It wasn't grand, but it was real. Built with purpose, not polish. Spencer adjusted the mic stand for me and grinned from the side. He'd grown into this space faster than I expected. Half co-founder, half handyman, and 100% believer. I gave him a small nod before stepping forward, palms only slightly sweating. "Thank you for coming," I began, voice steady, the hum of the crowd settling. "This building used to hold toner cartridges and outdated printers. Now it holds the weight of ideas, small ones, fragile ones, ones that might not have a voice yet." Jonah whooped from the back, which earned him a few chuckles from the front row. He wore a slightly crooked name tag that read Junior Tech Mentor, and had been buzzing around all morning, showing guests the 3D printed models his group had been working on. Behind him, I spotted Ms. Harrington, arms crossed in quiet pride, her sharp gaze softer today. "And me?" I continued. "Well, I came from a booth that nobody looked at, but somehow I found people who did. And now, we have a roof." The applause was modest but sincere. When I stepped down, my fingers brushed the string of paper thank you notes taped along the front table. "You made coding not boring," one read, signed with a crayon drawing of me holding a laptop and what might have been a dinosaur. After the ceremony, I found myself near the refreshment table, holding a lukewarm coffee and avoiding the lemon bars that hadn't set properly. That's when I saw Serena. She stood near the back, alone, in a simple gray coat with her hair pulled into a neat bun. She didn't wave or push her way through, just waited until I noticed, then approached slowly. "This is something," she said. "It is," I agreed. "I didn't come to make a speech." I know. She reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. I sold some shares. I want to put something in. No strings. Really, I just wanted to help. I stared at the envelope. Not long ago, this kind of gesture would have made me suspicious, but now I feel no fear, only space, a clear, open space where something new might grow. Not as sisters, I said, voice calm, but as peers. She nodded once, as if that was more than enough. Then she turned, letting the crowd swallow her back up. She didn't stay for cake. Later, when the cleanup began, Jonah carrying chairs, Spencer wrangling tangled cords, I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a personal check, generous and clean. No memo line, no conditions, and a folded note. You were always the better architect. Build something beautiful. I pressed the note flat and slid it into my notebook. The same one I once thought I'd bury behind disappointment and family politics. Now it held a new chapter, written in my own ink. I walked to the front of the room, where the light hit just right, and looked out at the small crowd still mingling. Neighbors chatted near the tech displays, teens showing off app mock-ups they barely believed in last month. A thank you banner hung a little crooked on the wall. Somewhere in the distance, someone had started playing an old Motown track from a Bluetooth speaker. And there, in the gentle buzz of people who cared, in the scratch of folding chairs on wood, in the way the fairy lights blinked like a heartbeat, I look out at the crowd and whisper to myself, I think I already am. Some stories don't end with a standing ovation, but with a quiet nod, a handwritten card, and a foundation laid on something more lasting than pride. We often forget that the kindest voices are rarely the loudest, and the ones we overlook might just be building something beautiful behind the scenes. Kindness, when given freely and without judgment, has a way of circling back, often stronger, softer, and right on time. If this story reminded you of someone who went unseen for too long, leave a heart in the comments and let them know they were never forgotten. And if it brought you comfort, I'd be honored if you subscribed so we can keep walking through stories like this, one quiet triumph at a time.